The streets of a U.S. town in the state of Arkansas have been deluged by over 10,000 barrels of crude oil after an ExxonMobil pipeline burst on Friday. Around 24 homes have been evacuated, with some residents forced to stay away for several more days, while a cleanup operation continues. RT's Washington correspondent Ale Chichikan has the details now.
ExxonMobil is naturally trying to downplay environmental concerns. They're not saying exactly how much oil spilled onto the streets of that neighborhood in Arkansas, but the company says it has already collected more than 12,000 barrels of oil mixed with water from the affected area. Not clear how much of it was water, though. 22 homes were evacuated there as they're still cleaning up. The pipeline that leaked was carrying Canadian heavy crude to the south of the U.S. to the country's Gulf Coast refineries. This latest spill prompted immediate response from critics of the proposed Keystone XL pipeline. The Keystone XL pipeline would carry 800,000 barrels per day. Just to compare, the pipe that leaked in Arkansas can carry around 90,000 barrels a day, so the consequences of a leak could be devastating. The Keystone pipeline would also carry Canadian heavy crude to U.S. refineries in the south. The project doesn't have the final green light from the administration just yet, but the oil giants involved are pushing the administration very hard to go ahead with it, saying it will bring down fuel costs in the U.S. TransCanada's first Keystone line in the U.S. spilled at least a dozen times just in its first year of operation. The company, of course, says the new Keystone XL will be so much better, but people know from experience how devastating consequences of an oil spill can be and how hard it is to clean up. This is certainly not the first incident. Of course, everyone remembers the disaster in the Gulf of Mexico in 2010 when, after an explosion, a BP pipe had been leaking oil on the ocean floor for several months before the well was capped. An estimated 4.9 million barrels of oil had leaked into the Gulf then. 3 years later, the Gulf is still not oil-free. In July 2010, a pipeline rupture spewed more than 20,000 barrels of Canadian tar sands crude oil into the Michigan waterway. So this happens all the time. Just last week, the government suggested ExxonMobil pay a fine of $1.7 million over pipeline safety violations, and that was for an oil spill 2 years ago in the Yellowstone River in Montana. Exxon has a month to contest the violations. Many believe that oil giants get away with violations like that all too often in the U.S., and all it takes is a team of really good lawyers to do that, which the companies certainly have, and that at the end of the day, it's the people affected who pick up the slack. In Washington, I'm Gane Chekan.
Well, this latest oil spill in a small U.S. town has once again raised questions about environmental hazards of using older pipelines to transport increasingly large amounts of oil across the continent. Environmental consultant Richard Steiner says the Pegasus pipeline is long past its sell-by date.
There's no excuse whatsoever for oil pipelines to be anything over 30 years old. Their general design life is maybe 20 to 30 years. There's been several spills, about 6 or 7, of this heavy diluted bitumen, it's called dilbit, which is this tar sand oil, which is so thick it can't be transported through a pipeline unless it's cut with condensate and benzene. Exxon has shown time and time again that they are not willing to accept responsibility, legitimate financial responsibility for their actions, however negligent they are. They got out of the Alaska spill with, about $1 billion paid to the 30,000 private litigants, and it should have been, by many of their estimations, much, much more than that. So they have a history of shortchanging responses.